Hi, I'm Kimberly, and welcome to As I've Seen It. Like many of you, like millions of people around the world, I watched the two nominees for President of the United States have their debate Monday night. I know that there are many people who, on principle, believe they cannot vote for Hillary Clinton. Let me state that if you're not voting for Hillary, you're basically voting for Trump. We know Jill Stein can't win. We know the guy who doesn't know where Aleppo is can't win. So if you're not voting for Hillary, you're basically voting for Trump, and that's a very dangerous thing. You are putting the lives of every person of color that you know at risk. And I don't think that's an exaggeration, and I'm going to tell you why. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That phrase, enshrined in the Declaration of Independence, is sort of the founding principle of the United States of America. In the Constitution, it's embedded in the 14th Amendment, in the clause that states roughly, no person shall be deprived of life, of liberty, or property without due process of law. It also guarantees equal protection under the laws. The 14th Amendment is also the birthright citizenship law. If you're born in the U.S., you're a U.S. citizen, period. I believe that all of those principles would be in danger under a President Donald. And I'll give you 3 reasons why. Reason 1, Donald Trump doesn't believe in the phrase, all men are created equal. And I'm not making that up, and I'm not speculating. He's actually said that. It's on tape. Also, Trump has said in many interviews that he believes his success is due to his genetics. He talks about genetics a lot. He talks about his genes, his superior genes. One of his biographers states that he got this idea from his father, and he has clearly passed it on to Uday and Qusay, because his son, Junior, tends to retweet white supremacists. We've seen this over and over. Trump himself has retweeted white supremacist memes. His talk about genetics has largely gone unnoticed in the press, but it hasn't gone unnoticed by white supremacists. That's part of the reason they flock to him. As recently as July, at the Republican National Convention, Representative Steve King of Iowa said that the subgroups, meaning non-white people, have contributed nothing to Western civilization. This is a sitting member of the U.S. Congress. That's reason 1. Reason 2, unless the Senate gets its act together and appoints Merrick Garland, a President Donald could appoint a Supreme Court justice. And make no mistake, Supreme Court decisions have the power to do great damage to the lives of people of color. 1896, Plessy v. Ferguson enshrined segregation across the country. One Supreme Court decision changed the lives of everyone. Which brings me to point 3. Donald Trump is already issuing statements that make it clear that people of color would be treated differently under his administration. He stepped into the political arena by grabbing onto the concept of birtherism. And let us not forget, he didn't just ask for the president's birth certificate. He wanted his transcripts from Columbia University because he didn't believe that someone like Barack Obama could possibly have been a student at Columbia or could have possibly earned the grades that got him into Harvard Law School. Someone who's not as genetically superior as, say, a Trump. As the journalist Touré said, he was essentially saying, papers, boy. Remember the law in Arizona not too long ago, the Papers, Please law, where the state of Arizona decided it would be just okay to have law enforcement stop people on the street who they thought just by looking at them might be illegal immigrants and demand people's papers. Donald has already said that he wants to start throwing out people that he believes are illegal from day one of his administration. So the papers, please policy would be all over the country. Trump has stated that, of course, there would be different treatment for people who are Muslim. He started by saying we can't allow Muslims into the country. That morphed into, oh, we shouldn't allow people from countries that have had any sort of terrorist activity. And of course, that would include having a database of American citizens who are Muslims. A database of American citizens. How long before they'd have to start wearing, say something like a yellow crescent on their clothing to identify them? So different treatment for Hispanics, different treatment for Muslims, different treatment for African Americans. As he stated the other night in the debate, he wants to bring about law and order. And one of the ways he'd do that would be to implement stop and frisk across the country. Stop and frisk was a horribly racist practice, and it was deemed unconstitutional by a federal judge. And the only reason that case has not continued is because the current mayor of New York, Bill de Blasio, decided not to appeal against the federal judge's decision that it was unconstitutional. Under the policy of stop and frisk, New York City police officers were stopping, questioning, frisking, harassing African American and Hispanic men on the streets of New York. I believe the estimate in the year 2011 was more than 650,000 stops. Approximately 88% of those stops were African Americans and Latinos. Overwhelmingly African Americans and Latinos, and I believe that 0.15% of those stops resulted in the police finding any sort of weapons. And most of those weapons weren't found on African Americans and Latinos. They were found on the white citizens that the police stopped. Earlier in the campaign, Donald declared that he had spoken to a high-ranking Chicago police officer about the murders in Chicago, and that this officer told him that he could stop the violence in a week because police just needed to be tougher. Police in America are already shooting African American men, women, and children. How much tougher do they need to be? Do they need to be tougher than they were in Ferguson? Do they need to be tougher than they've been in Charlotte? Do they need to do more than throw tear gas at civilians? By demanding that President Obama show him his papers, Donald Trump was essentially saying, you don't belong in that space. You don't belong in the White House. Telling someone of color you don't belong in this space is the underlying principle of Jim Crow. You don't belong in this space. Trayvon Martin was murdered because George Zimmerman decided this black boy didn't belong in this space. Donald Trump made it clear at the debate that he was unapologetic for his birtherism, that he has no qualms about having different laws for policing different people, that he has no respect for women that he deems unattractive, and that America under his leadership would be a dangerous place for all minorities. Thanks for watching.